Hey guys, and welcome to another video on Destroyer gameplay. This time we're going to talk about torpedoing. And torpedoing is a skill that does require a bit of luck. Sometimes it feels very random, but there are things you can do to maximize your chances of landing the torpedo hits. However, the somewhat random nature of it makes it sometimes a bit hard to evaluate whether your torpedo salvos were good or not. Sometimes you are lucky and you get hits on ships that you forgot were even there, and other times you simply send a good torpedo salvo and it makes the perfect gap for your enemy to escape on. But let's look at some of the basics. In this case, here is an enemy battleship sailing in the direction of the red line, and you want to position yourself where the white destroyer is. This way you are on his flank, he's sailing towards where your torpedoes are going to be sent, and you can send the torpedoes so that the enemy battleship catches them right on the broadside. This lowers his chances of dodging and lowers his reaction time, so fairly simple if he does not change his course. Now here is a friendly battleship who's got his broadside and is probably gonna shoot him. So in this case, the chances of the red battleship sailing forward are not that big, and if he does, he's gonna die probably. So he's probably gonna turn to the starboards or the right side. And in this case, I'm actually better off just sailing forward. So you want to keep sailing forward, position yourself on his flank once again, so that once he makes his turn, you can torpedo from the other side. So you want to try to predict what the enemy is going to do before you send your torpedoes. Now let's look at a real life example of this. I am kiting away from Salem and Stalingrad together with my friendly Smolensk. Now, the Salem and the Stalingrad were chasing the Smolensk and kind of also chasing me, but I want to make sure that they're not gonna spot the Smolensk and turn towards him before I send my torpedoes, because if they do, I really need to send the torpedoes where they're gonna be going. But it looks like at least the Salem has lost interest and is going for the B cap, and therefore I'm getting ready to torpedo him now. I do see that we have a Stalingrad who is in a position to shoot him. So I fully expect the Salem to do some dodging. So I'm sending my torpedoes slightly behind the white line. The first set of torpedoes was slightly behind, the next one was a bit further behind, and the next a bit further behind again. I'm sending narrow spread torpedoes. I almost always use narrow spread torpedoes because it's just very easy to dodge if you don't, for a cruiser especially, but even battleships, narrow spreads are definitely, in my experience, the better choice almost every time. The Salem does dodge. He has to angle against the Stalingrad and he has to do a bit of dodging because he's in combat, so that's simply just knowing what the behavior of a ship, the typical behavior, you can never know. I mean, some people just go straight and yeah. But this is typical behavior of a cruiser, and the predicted torps turn out to be good. Let's look at another example of this. In this case, there's a succes who is about to sail away from me, it seems. So he's not going to be a good torpedo target. So I'm looking at the Friedrich de Grosse on my right flank. He is dodging, weaving a little bit, but he's sailing towards me at this point. So you might think that going to the J line and setting up for a torpedo run there might be a good idea. But I fully expect him to make a starboard turn, turning towards A. And therefore I'm continuing my course here, trying to get to where his flank is gonna be. So trying to predict what his movements are gonna be and act accordingly and get myself into the best possible position to get some good torpedoes off. As you can see, he did turn towards A, and the only distraction at this point there might be is the Sovietsky Soyuz in B, and that's not too far off the course that he's at right now. He can still angle and keep sailing towards A, so I expect him to sort of continue. So in this case, I'm torping in front of the white line. The white line that you can see is a replay bug. I did have the Friedrich der Große targeted and not the Sovietsky Soyuz. So I torp a bit in front of the white line because I expect him to pick up some speed after coming out of the turn. And then the second set of torpedoes were about at the white line, as far as I remember. And as you can see, I'm starting to open up a little bit. This is simply just to get any additional damage I can before this game ends. It's definitely decided at this point. But the point of this is that you want to not act based on where the enemy is heading, but based on what you expect him to be doing within the next 1, maybe 2, maybe even 3 minutes. That's how you get in good positions to do some good torpedo runs and maximize your potential for landing good torpedo hits. Now this next example is going to be a little bit different, because in this case it's not so much the movement of the ships that decides my initial position going for this torp run. It's actually the map itself. This Stalingrad has positioned itself in the typical radar cruiser spot on this flank, and normal behavior of these ships is they're gonna put the island on one side and then make sure that no one can push the flank on the other side. And that means he's gonna stay there for a while. And we did spot the Kremlin going towards him, so at this point I'm expecting the Stalingrad to wait for the Kremlin and then do a combined push. If the Stalingrad keeps going backwards, our Thunderer is gonna be able to shoot his broadside, so torpedoing towards that island makes sure that there's really no good option for him. And that's what you want to do. You want to make sure that the enemy has no good options. That they only have the choice between a few bad options. And the Kremlin chooses one bad option in this case and pushes a bit forward, while the Stalingrad chooses the other bad option by fully reversing, trying to get out of my torpedo range. And that means he's now actually exposed. He reversed behind that island and he's still spotted, so the Thunderer can get a really good hit on him. So at this point, the push that we expected is not gonna happen, because the Stalingrad just lost a huge chunk of HP, the Kremlin just lost a huge chunk of HP. So now I just want to make sure that the position that they're sitting in right there is just gonna be bad for them, basically. So I'm sending torpedoes once again. I might hit the Kremlin, I might hit the Stalingrad if he tries to get back into that position. And I can see that the Kremlin did indeed stop the push, so I didn't really need to save any torpedoes for torpedoing in front of him in case of a push. And the Kremlin is going backwards a little bit now, and he might be going a bit forwards, a little bit backwards. So as you can see, I spread out my torpedoes a little bit, but they do overlap, and this is an important thing. The spreads of torpedoes that I'm sending are overlapping in a way that it's gonna be really difficult to dodge all of them. If you just send one towards the ship and one completely to the right of that one and one completely to the left of it, there's gonna be pretty big gaps that can be used to evade the torpedoes. In this case, I do get a pretty nice spread on the torpedoes. You do rely a bit on RNG in this case, and I was lucky enough that he had really no chance of escaping those torpedoes. And he's low enough that it's really easy to just gun him down me and the Des Moines. Now, the next couple of examples are from the same game. I played a game in the Benham when I decided to make this video, just to make sure that I would get a lot of torpedo runs off and show what my thought process is here. In this case, the two enemy battleships and the rune behind them are all rushing my teammate in the Izumo. So I check that the Izumo isn't just about to die, and then I kind of know that they're going for him, and they are almost certainly not slowing down right away. I send my second salvo behind it in case they do slow down, but what I know is that they can't just turn. They can't show broadside to the Izumo. That would be very, very dangerous, and since they're in a combat already, they're probably not even realizing that I was spotted for a while, and that's one dead battleship. Not too long after that, this happened. I get spotted once again by the Kitakaze. Try to gunfight a little bit, and just get the little bit of damage done that I can before it gets too dangerous. Once he starts opening up too much, I have to smoke up. But now that I'm smoking up, there's no doubt that the enemy know where I am. And we are indeed being rushed by Georgia, who is trying to rush the smoke. In this case, I see a lot of destroyers just sit stationary in the smoke and overstay their welcome, waiting for the enemy to get close enough that they're sure to land their torpedoes. But once they are that, it's also dangerous for the destroyer, especially if they don't have spotting. So I'm moving out of smoke, and I am moving away from the smoke, sideways away from that smoke, so that I get to the flank of this Georgia. The Georgia is still rushing the smoke, although none of us are actually there. And so these torpedoes that I'm sending have a very high chance of hitting him, because he can't really turn away from the smoke this close. He's expecting the torpedoes to come from the smoke. So now that they come from the side instead, it catches him off guard, and he takes 3 torpedoes. Now, of course, since this is a Benham, that's not the end of it. I can fire more torpedoes. In this case, he knows that he has to dodge a bit. So I don't expect him to sail just straight ahead at this point, but instead maybe wiggle a little. That's why I'm sending these torpedoes a little bit to each side and just overlapping slightly in the middle. So if he makes a wrong turn, that could hurt really bad. He does make a slightly unfortunate turn for him, and that's another 2 torpedoes. After that, it's only the rune left over here. There is a destroyer, but he's too far away, and I am not really sure that's who I want to be fighting at this point. The rune takes an unfortunate torp there. I mean, he probably isn't paying too much attention. I start by actually firing off torpedoes towards the rune. Now I'm going for the YOLO torps. The only reason I started firing these torpedoes is, again, this is a Benham. I'll have the other side of torpedoes ready when he gets there. So I fire those mostly as a distraction, really, because I want the rune to not know what to do until it's too late. And that's right here. So what he should have done was obviously turn away from the destroyer, but I used my speed boost. He's sailing directly towards me, and that means it's just really, really, really hard for him to meet in time, actually. Now, those were definitely YOLO torps towards the end of the game, but not all ambush torpedoes are necessarily YOLO torps. In this case, there's a Yamato pushing around an island slowly. I guess he knows that I'm coming. I was radared just before this. But I drop smoke, he has to blind fire. It's not really a big deal. It's not much risk for me. and it's definitely a dead Yamato. So if you can use terrain to ambush well, any ship really, it is definitely something to look for. So in conclusion, before lining up a torp run, try to think about what the enemy ship is either being forced to do by your team or what that enemy ship is attempting to do. Is he going for a cap? Is he being shot? Is he bow tanking one of your ships? Or is he chasing one of your ships? Try to find ships that are in a position where they can't really change their course much. Try to find ships that are already engaged in a battle and they're maybe not as attentive towards where there might be torps coming from. All of these things lead to better target selection, and with enough games, definitely a higher damage. You may not see any improvement right away. You may, as said before, be unlucky with your torpedo hits. You may have teammates or enemies that react in completely unpredictable ways. And you may just find yourself in positions where you can't really get any good torp runs on anything. You're being zoned out. There are ships pushing with hydro and so on. But again, you are trying to maximize your chances of landing torpedoes, and with enough games, it's definitely gonna show. If you're not landing your torpedoes, I would definitely recommend that you check your replays. See if there's something that you're missing. Is there something that when you're not busy playing the game, that you can spot something that the enemy is about to do before it actually happens? This is a very, very good way to learn how to play the game, I think. Anyway, I hope that you enjoyed this and hopefully learned a little bit as well. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.